We just concluded a live session with Dr. Bill Lam on the timely topic of water for all as part of activities lined up to celebrate SDG Week. At Conestoga, we believe that amplifying efforts towards a greener and healthier environment is a must. At 1 p.m., we will have the last SDG live stream. It would be about Conestoga Entrepreneurship Collective, the CEC. So please make time to join us. Now, what if I told you that in the time it takes to watch this episode, a woman somewhere in the world will break a new record? Launch a groundbreaking initiative or take a bold step toward change. But here's the thing. Progress doesn't just happen. It takes action. It takes voices. It takes people like you and me. And you don't have to be a woman to lend your voice. Welcome to a very special edition of Your Conestoga Today, our International Women's Day celebration. I'm your host, Mama Zawonkero. We're talking about the future. This year's theme is Accelerate Action. And trust me, you're going to want to stay glued to your screens because we're diving into what that really means. But first, ever wondered how you can personally help create a more equal world? We've got real practical tips. We want you to be part of the conversation, so please tell us, what does accelerate action mean to you? Drop your answers in the comment section. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and let's make this a true celebration of action and empowerment. All right, let's get into the meat of today's show because the future won't wait and neither will we. It's time to accelerate action. Let's dive into some inspiring stories of change makers who are actively working to close the gender equality gap. Their journeys offer valuable insights and actionable roadmaps for looking to contribute to this vital cause. Emma Watson. You might know Emma Watson from her role as Hermione Granger, but did you know she's also a powerhouse for gender equality? In 2014, she launched the He for She campaign with the United Nations, calling on men and boys to join the fight for gender equality. Her passionate speech at the UN went viral, sparking global conversations and commitments. Since then, millions have pledged to support the movement, including global leaders and CEOs, illustrating the power of inclusive advocacy. Now, what can we take away from Emma's experience? Emma's approach shows that involving everyone, regardless of gender, is crucial in accelerating action towards equality. What about Paul Polman? Former Unilever CEO Paul Polman didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk. Under his leadership, Unilever became a founding champion of the He for She Impact 10 by 10 by 10 initiative, committing to achieve gender parity across management. Polman's efforts demonstrated that corporate leaders could drive systemic change, setting benchmarks for others to follow. Paul's leadership underscores the impact of corporate commitments to gender equality, showing that businesses can be catalysts for societal change. Now, let's bring it back home. Here in Canada, our Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau openly identifies as a feminist and has made gender equality a cornerstone of his administration. His government implemented policies promoting equal pay and increased female representation in leadership roles, reflecting a national commitment to closing the gender gap. Justin's stand illustrates how political leadership can set the tone for national progress in gender equality. Now, Bruce Cleaver. As CEO of De Beers Group, Bruce Cleaver has been a vocal advocate for gender equality. The company partnered with UN Women to support women's empowerment in diamond-producing countries, aiming for equal representation in their workforce. Cleaver's initiatives highlight how industry leaders can influence global supply chains to be more inclusive. Bruce's actions demonstrate that industry-specific initiatives can have a profound impact on global gender equality efforts. Winston Duke. Actor Winston Duke, known for his role in Black Panther, uses his platform to challenge traditional notions of masculinity and advocate for gender equality. As a He for She advocate, he emphasizes the importance of men supporting women's rights and redefining gender roles. Winston's advocacy shows that cultural influences can play a pivotal role in shifting societal perceptions and promoting equality. Now we'll take a short break. When we return, I'm happy to announce that we have very important guests who will be sharing their perspectives on this very important issue as we celebrate International Women's Day 2025. I'm your host, Mama So. Welcome. Yeah, so
it's quite simple, but recognizable anywhere in the world.
Wraps around the ear, and all I did with this one is I rolled down.
Good luck today.
Thanks, man.
How I'm loving life these days. I see it falling into place. It's coming together. I don't even need to chase it. You see it written on my face. It's the right time, right place. How I'm loving life these days. It's the right time, right place. How I'm loving life these days.
2025. If we're talking about accelerating action and bridging the gender gap in tech, then today's guest is the perfect voice to lead that conversation. She's not just breaking barriers, she's building bridges for others to cross. a powerhouse in every sense of the word, Nkechi Nwafor Robinson wears many hats. CEO and founder of Empowered in My Skin, Vice President at Export Development Canada, EDC, a tech leader, a transformation coach, and a passionate advocate for women in STEM. With a career rooted in technology and leadership, she has spent years championing diversity, inclusion, and the undeniable power of women in tech spaces. Nkechi believes that when you empower women, you empower entire industries. She's made it her mission to not only succeed in male-dominated fields, but to change them, creating opportunities, mentoring rising talents, and reshaping the narrative around what's possible for women in tech. Today, she's here to share the hot truths, the bold solutions, and the real steps we can take to close the gender gap in tech. Get ready for an insightful, action-packed discussion with a leader who is redefining what it means to be empowered in your skin. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nkechi Nwafor Robinson.
You know, I'm watching, I'm like, you know what? Everything that's going through my head is like, listen to this introduction and have the grace to be okay with it. Like,
Really?
No, as women, we tend to like, oh my God, like I'm so, and I'm just like, no, I'm gonna watch you. I'm gonna hear your the enunciation of everything. And I'm gonna sit in pride. It's God. But
No, really, Nkechi. I mean, you embody energy, power, and courage.
Thank you.
And the very first time I met you, I don't know if you remember, it was at Evolve Tech Summit. I was hosting that event, and I just introduced you as one of the panelists for that for the session. And you stood up, and you're moving towards the stage, but you are intentionally taking your time until you held the room in still silence, and everybody was awed. What's happening here? Until eventually, in that distinct energy and courage personified voice, you broke the silence. You're our powerhouse indeed.
Thank you.
And it's good to have you
Thank
here
you.
today.
And I have to also say that I don't know what I was looking for. I was doing a search because I wanted to quickly like send you a note. And I was like, but we haven't, I saw another email from like, hold on, 2023? Like, and I was like, oh my God. And then oh my God, that's the same human.
You're the same human.
I was like, I love it. I love it.
Good. So it's good to have you today.
Thank
In
you.
fact, I knew you had to be the person here on the sit today to talk about how we can empower women in STEM. I mean, already you're a vice president at Export Development Canada. But tell us quickly about your journey and, or do we start by saying, first and foremost, the theme for this year is Accelerate Action. What does that mean to you?
Well, so I was driving up because I had a little bit of a drive to get to here, Kitchener, and we were actually really talking about that. And I think that oftentimes we get mirrored in the need to create more or new strategies about how to sort of continue to tackle this problem. And I'm 52 years old, right? And so I even think
You
about—
don't look like it, by the way.
Thank you. But I say it because I don't look it. And so
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, well, what does she know? Well, I have 25 years of corporate experience, so I do know, right? And I have 52 years of living in this skin and within my gender, so I am very qualified, right? And so, and I realize that there's already existing actions that we have not necessarily really excelled at doing consistently, versus trying to think and innovate and create new ones. There's a lot of existing, so as I think about this whole accelerating action theme for this year, I think it's more about just like accelerate what we haven't already accelerated, right? Like there's already existing actions. Let's just double down, all of us, on them. And I just want to pull it into this space, right? Like I think where I'm feeling I could have felt discouraged was how quickly DEI dismantled since the end of January, right? It dismantled, like in a blink of an eye, it was sort of like already like dismantling, and not just in a really small sector of the world, but like it's come over to the border. It's transcended across seas, and I realized that fundamentally that's also because there was so much performative action, right? So accelerating action can't just be like, it can't be performative in the sense that you're trying to demonstrate that you're accelerating action. It needs to actually be meaningful and rooted. And so I would say before you accelerate, just take a moment to really ask yourself, what's the intention, right? Like, what problem are you truly trying to resolve, and how deep in the roots is that action going to actually, the results that you want to yield from that action would be what I think needs to be forefront of leaders today and organizations and systems and structures that are being built, right? So, yeah, it's an interesting time to have this conversation. I've never really expressed that publicly before, but yeah, if more than ever, I think now is the time for all of us who still really believe that this is not something that we have to do, it's something that we truly want to see and affect change in the world, to double down and continue along, sort of the actions that have already been identified, and just really just do them a little bit more intentionally and with just a deeper intention.
I like this. We're having a great start already. Thank you so much for bringing out that beat of we didn't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
We just need to consolidate on
Yeah.
what we're building on and then build faster, really. Okay, so
Can I give you an example?
Yeah,
Could I?
go ahead.
Are we allowed? Like, are we off?
No,
we're off?
for sure,
Okay.
feel free.
So just to root that a little bit more, I was invited to an event, and I was actually trying to remember. It was a big organization. It might have been an Accenture or something like that. An event. There's about 300 people in the room, and I was invited to be on a panel. It was IWD. And there was a moderator and 3 other women plus myself. And the last question that we were asked, and I happened to be the last person to answer it, was what other actions or what new actions can we take to further this journey? So this would have been just before we went into pandemic, okay, so 2020. And I remember when it came to me, I said, do I have permission to stand? It's odd, everyone's sitting there. But I stood to the front of the stage, and I looked out to the room, and I said, could all the Black women in this room please stand up? And so I counted 8 in a room of over 300 people. And I said, so I'm 1, I brought 2, which meant that the rest of the 5, if they didn't come on their own, are the contribution of the rest of the people in this room. And so as we start to think about, because I can't remember what the theme was that year, but again, it's always about like either accelerating, growing, evolving, like moving the dial and all of it. Everything is about progression, right? But here's a tactic that in 2020, in that particular room, was not uncommon. You're often told, bring somebody with you. Make the tables that you occupy diverse, right? So I said, I don't think we need new actions. I think we just need to double down again on the existing ones that we have and actually make them count. And it's sad to say, but 4.5 years later, or 4 years and 3 months in, I don't feel different. I think there are some actions that are on the table that can work, but it actually takes us having that deep intention to actually make it work.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll come to those actions,
Okay.
but first, let's piggyback on you and your experience, because now you've reason to become VP of a very of a global organization. So tell us about your journey and your personal challenges navigating those spaces.
So I'm going to be really quick because in 25 years, I can say that what still matters is upbringing, right? And so my dad put a computer in front of me at the age of like a really young age. I have a brother. He had a computer. He wasn't going to play with dolls. And so for me, it wasn't one or the other. It was I could play with dolls and also learn how to use a computer. And so I learned how to program. I did math and computer science in university. It was a natural foray for me to get into technology. I think what changed was I was an individual contributor, right, actually doing the hands-on keyboard work. But then other people recognized leadership in me. And so that has since evolved into sort of my journey in technology has typically been from leading large teams, leading groups of technologists, having the opportunity to solve big and meaty problems. For the most of my career, I have been on the infrastructure and operations side, so in the data center, like hugging servers and this and the other, so really working with the real techie minds. And I have then married like the whole concept of empowerment and helping sort of humans grow and recognize their value at the tables that they occupy and melge them into what I believe is a really strong leadership brand that I've sort of built for myself, or God's built for me, but and I'm just being obedient. But that's my passion in it, is that I do get to do that in the space of tech, which then feeds my whole desire to be solving meaty, challenging problems and using technology, leveraging technology in order to be able to do that.
That's amazing. Now let's talk about the tech industry and how we still do not have proper representation in terms of gender representation. What are those actionable ways that we can implement or strategize on and to ensure that women have not just a seat on the table, but they also have quality, they add quality value to those spaces?
So I think I think it's a top-down approach. So kind of building from the story I just said, my dad really, at a young age, like I think something still needs to happen in the household,
Yes.
right? Like kids need to be shown what is possible, because they don't know, right? And so I would say, encourage parents. These days, kids have phones at a very young age. Like, don't only give them a phone, but start to ask them, what does this phone do? How do you think this phone, get their minds thinking about the actual thing, the tech that they're holding. I think there's still, obviously, huge responsibility from the top down. And I'll marry back to what I said about the whole dismantling. It just happened really too quickly, in my opinion. And I think it goes back to that sort of that age-old analogy. Like if you go to a doctor's office, they give you a clipboard and they ask you what is your family history? Like you go in because you're sick, but they ask you what is your family history, and they want to understand the root cause or your history before they actually start to treat you. Otherwise, they're just treating the symptom. And I think it's the same thing for a lot of these organizations. They never went deep into the roots of their organization to understand how did we get to where we are on today, where we don't really have a diverse organization, and then really start to solve from that. So I think top down, there's still a real need to really understand the systems and the structures that are built in your organizations, understand the problems, and then really ask yourself, what problem do we want to solve? I mean, there's proven business value to having diverse teams, to having women in the room, to having women as part of the solution and not making it so homogeneous. So there's true value in that. But for it to be sustainable, the systems, the structure, the support that you need to have in an organization so that you're not only attracting women in, but then they want to stay.
Yes.
And they want
to grow.
And they want to make the sacrifice and find that way to harmonize their lives, so that they can actually grow and provide and contribute in a meaningful way. Anyway, it's that whole top-down approach I think is still very much needed in order to really continue to grow this.
So we see that now we have a couple of organizations, even NGOs now, sort of fostering STEM initiatives, even for the younger children and what have you. But what do you think, if we're to do a needs assessment, what do you think would still be a core need, given the changes that are now happening, and we're hoping we can, of course, improve on them. But what do you think would be a core need for today's generation?
I'm going to say the barrier of entrance. It can't be so hard. Even if I think about the whole, nowadays they say every company is a tech company, every employee is a tech employee. You have the entrepreneurial, the whole tech startups and this and the other. There's still a barrier of entrance and harder for marginalized or women to be getting funding, right? It's still really quite difficult. It tends to go to men first. Kind of related, I just want to provide this linkage. I also do believe that even as we talk about AI, the presence of AI, we think about some of the emerging technologies that are coming, there's still I don't have black, I don't have women, I don't have, sort of the diverse people sitting at the table, hands and keyboard. So how are we still creating these emerging technologies and leaving people out of the equation, not only in the technology itself, but also at the table doing the work to create these technologies? And so I think it's going to be about making the entrance for people to be able to gain these skills not so difficult or not so specific to certain type of people, but making it more accessible and available, right? And in communities and stuff like that. So it takes people like myself. I was just talking about it with your upcoming guest that I'm an angel investor, and so it's how am I also finding, sort of women, we only invest in women-led tech startups.
Oh.
Right? So it's about more of us being able to do that kind of work, right? And taking a risk on people without them having to actually prove that they can do it, but saying to them that I want to provide you with the resources to be able to help you believe that you can, right? So.
And really, we all need that one person to give us the
100%.
Yeah, the first opportunity.
110%. 100%. I was going to say 120, but I'm a math. You can never have 120%, but 100%. Yes.
So, Nkechi, let's talk about balancing professional and personal life. For women, it's really tough sometimes because you manage a couple of things back home and then you have your workspaces. But there are women who have actually been able to some extent, I don't know if there's a balance, but they've been able to at least manage both responsibilities at home and at work. You are in that space where you have grown yourself to become a top tier leader. What are those key elements that women need to pay attention to at least aim to strike a balance? And I don't know if striking a balance is actually a reality or can be achieved, but how can we at least aim to strike a balance between our responsibility at home as well as being the top tier leader?
So I'm actually going to springboard because when you just said, I don't know that striking, I think you're like high five. I think this whole balance thing used to really confuse me. Like that, to me, when I think about balance, I'm thinking, you're kind of sitting here.
50% here, 50%
right.
here. That's really
It's so not true.
Yeah.
So it's actually, I didn't come up with this, but Shonda Rhimes, I listened to an interview. She might have been doing it with Oprah or somebody. You remember she used to own Thursday nights? And so she taught me about harmony. And so as women, you're not always going to get it. You're not always going to get it right if you're trying to strike a balance, right? And so I think first and foremost, you got to give yourself some grace. And then you have to, and then I think I hate to say you have to, I would invite into this whole space of trying to figure that out. Like, what are the things that would feel harmony, would make you feel harmonious in life, right? And so start to think about your career, you start to think about your family, you start to think about maybe like having a side hustle, you start to think about writing a book, you start to think about your passion projects, you start to think about vacation, so these are the things that would make me feel harmonious. I can't do them all at the same time. So it's about saying that, okay, these are the things I want to see, and on any given day, I'm going to be okay with giving my career like everything, and then yes, I'm going to also give myself grace because maybe my husband or my children or my passion projects suffer, but the next day, I'm going to choose to give my family and my career is just going to have to just take a little bit. I'll give it what I need, and then my family gets it, and then the next day is going to be my passion project. So it's about trying to figure that out. But the whole idea is not to over-index on one so that the others are suffering. And I'm trying to learn that. Have I mastered it? No, but I can definitely tell you, removing the what's called the stress or the thought that I can create balance in my life has been such a gift. Right? Versus, yeah, I can't do it all, but I can definitely figure out what are the things that give me the most joy, the most amount of fulfillment, and if they're present in my life, I feel like I'm living the life that I want. And then focusing on those things, knowing to say no to other stuff that doesn't sort of. Another thing I love, Victoria Pelletier said. Shout outs to her, very powerful leader. She says, where there's conviction, there's capacity. So it's not only about thinking about those things, but it's about being convicted. Those are the things that you need in your life in order for you to feel your best self.
Yes.
And when you are convicted about that, then the capacity naturally, organically gets created because you know what you need to say no to. You're not feeling the overwhelm.
We need to talk about Empowered in My Skin because you're just all of it.
I know. Okay, so thank you. I think I have it more so to try to get myself there, but thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
And there are many women who. In fact, let me go back to what you said initially. You spoke about the home front and how that can influence, even your career trajectory, your perspective about life, and all whatnot. There are many women who are still living with the traumas that they were served during their childhood days or from a teacher, whatever. And so they still feel shy, reserved, and incompetent. I know that your work with Empowered in My Skin is about helping people see their potential and acknowledge that they're capable of being who they are called to be. Could you speak to women who have lost faith in themselves, who are at the point where they're still questioning their courage, questioning the ability to be who they should be?
Oh, thank you. I could talk about this all day because I do believe that that's my mission, right? Is to help 1 billion people in this world think in ways that are empowering. And if it's 1 billion women, then even all the better, right? So obviously it was born from my lack of feeling that. I lived 42 years I'm going to say through God's grace, but getting to through a really great friend at the time that was, on my part of Team Inkachi, and really putting me in front of me, and giving me the strength and the boldness to sort of take a look at who me was, and that required me then excavating. To your point, excavating those things. There's a great book by Marianne Williamson called Return to Love. Anytime I tell this story, I have to.
I've heard her say that over and again.
Yeah. And in that book, she talks about, and I haven't met her. I'm hoping she's watching Your Conestoga Today and says, I want to meet that woman. But yeah, so she talks about babies are born into love and learn hate. And so I went through that journey of excavating all of the experiences that I believe had deposited hate in me, things that left me with frustration, anger, resentment, jealousy, unforgiveness, especially unforgiveness, right? All of those things, and exposing them, right? And to me, it was therapy. You expose them to therapy, you expose them to your faith, and it gives you an opportunity to say, maybe this is a little Oprah. It didn't happen to me, it happened for me. And then trying to understand what those things are and depositing them back into me from a place of love. And it was in that experience that evolved sort of what I felt was my more empowered self. So suddenly I'm in rooms and I'm not actually feeling like I'm not enough. I'm actually convicted about who I am as a human being and what my purpose and desire is in this world. And so that's what it is for most women as well, right? It's like giving yourself grace to realize that all of your experiences matter. And it's more of a matter of how do you re-look at those experiences from a place of empowerment and love, and then leading from there. I mean, it's a very big ask for women with a short period of time to explain it, but it really is right? Everything about you matters, and you're not a mistake, you're not an imposter. When you sit at the table, you have value, and it's just about continuously reminding yourself of that, and you have a lot of proof points for that, and so it's looking for those things, right?
I love that. Proof points. And everybody does have their own proof points. Something you have done and you should be proud about. So please remind yourself that you are enough. And Nkechi, we need to bring you back at some points where we can have a lot of time to really ask questions and then you can answer for me. But thank you so much for being on the show today, Nkechi. Everyone, we will take a short break, and when we return, we have another guest with me to discuss International Women's Day, a Celebrate Action, and this time we're talking media and gender narratives. Stay tuned. I'm your host, Mami So. Welcome. Yeah, so
It's quite simple, but recognizable anywhere in the world.
Wraps around the ear, and all I did with this one is I rolled that.
We're currently sitting in my studio space.
I started through discovering just different worlds of art.
Very quickly, you changed from statistics to poetry.
Connects my senses and it connects my brain.
I'm just making things that I think are cool.
More often than not, people are supportive.
How are people going to experience this, and what scale do things need to be?
The freedom was liberating for me to do something that I just love doing.
Still trying to figure out what my artistic career is. Who knows where I'll be in 2 years, 3 years. Who knows where I'll be in 10 months, Yeah.
it's my honor to introduce Melissa Durrell, the dynamic CEO and Chief Strategist of Durrell Communications. Melissa's journey from an award-winning Canadian broadcast journalist to a leading communication strategist exemplifies her exceptional storytelling prowess and commitment to amplifying change makers across various sectors. Melissa will share her insights on media and gender narratives, and it's my pleasure and honor to have you, Melissa. In fact, Melissa has been my mentor from a distance.
Oh, I love that you just said that. Thank you.
It's good to have you here, and
Thank you.
congratulations, because I know you just turned 14 years. I mean, your brand just turned 14 years. That's a lot of years.
Yeah, I've been saying I'm celebrating because most businesses don't last past 5.
Yes.
Especially female-run ones. So I said to my girls, like, 14's not a crazy number. Like, it's not 15, it's not 10, it's not 20, but I was like, we're doing 14 this year. I'm proud of ourselves. So
you should be
yeah, and
proud.
I mean, I have to credit to my team. I have an amazing group of women I work with every day. So
That's
yeah.
great. That's
Yeah.
great. And you know, you're a strong advocate for women's voices, especially in the media. You've taught a couple of sectors. But just tell me, in your own words, what do you think is accelerate action? What does that mean to you?
So accelerate action. I loved your last guest. She's amazing, and you know, it's funny because she was talking about how we need to start to double down. So for me right now, I'm doing a lot of work in mentoring, and I think that that's been a real gap for women. And I work in a board of directors called Women Communication Technology. You should become a member, by the way.
Okay.
And you know, anyone who's involved in communication technology, it started out as being all journalists, and now it's got a lot more women in tech in it. But it's an amazing organization. It's a national organization. And our local chapter here in Waterloo, we looked at what are all the other women's groups doing in this community, and there was a huge gap in mentoring. And so we started something called mentorship circles. So we've been doing that now for about 6 years. It's an incredible program. But when I think about accelerating action, it's that one-on-one work that I get to do with incredible young women, coaching them to help them maybe not make the same mistakes that I did, or like seeing things through an older lens. Like, I think that that's a big part of it too, as I've experienced it. You know, one of the hardest times I find for women, and it's where we see a lot of women leaving the workforce, or you know, not getting the promotions, is right around that 30 to 40 age, because we have children. And so you sort of drop out of the workforce for, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, you could take the full 18 months. But coming back to your career after that can be really, really challenging. And that's where, you know, you typically see men accelerate their careers in those time slots. And so that's my passion project right now, is mentoring women in that space, because I saw a massive change in my trajectory, my career at that point. So I really want to help other women get through that, be a loud voice for them, a little push if they need it, whatever that looks like. And I think, to me, that's what accelerating action right now looks like. How can I help those young women between the ages of 25 to like 40 stay in the game, stay passionate about what they're doing, open doors if we need to?
Melissa, I know that you are a strong voice in the media sector, and media itself has a great influence on how we see ourselves, how we view societal views. But tell me, do you have a story or two to share about maybe the worst narrative?
Oh, you're going there, are you?
We have to, because
Yeah.
then right now we're trying to pull off the rug and see what's underneath, and then do a deep clean, right?
Yeah, no. So this is very unique. Having 2 women on a show right now, like for everybody who's watching this is very unique. In 2025, this is a unique experience. 26% of spokespeople on network are women. So that means like that, you know, instead of it being 50% where I'm seeing a female geologist, a female physicist, whatever that might be, typically we go to the male stereotype. And that impacts us as women, because as we're watching the news or we're reading the newspaper and it's always a man quoted, or it's a man giving us the expert opinion on something, that affects us. And I think that's definitely one of the norms. So I do a lot of media training now, because, you know, going from being in front of the camera like yourself right now, to moving behind the camera, where I'm helping leaders, politicians, women, you know, be excited about the opportunity to be able to tell their stories. I think that's one of those things that we need to start to say to women. I mean, how often you ask someone to come on your show, and they're like, oh no, I'm sure there's somebody better, right? And like typically women will say, this person, I see it all the time in all of the organizations that I work in. So, one of the big drivers is for you as a producer to say, no, you're coming on my show. And then, for the rest of the communications field to say, no, we need to push women. We need to push this expertise out in the field. See it and be it. We need to continue to push that forward.
And it's true, it's really sometimes not the big things that we do. It's even the small things. And the small ways we try to reinforce what is important that goes even a longer way. So I hear you when you say that even the opportunity to be on a show could make a difference.
So my first job, like real paying job, like back in the day in broadcast, you were like interns didn't get paid. Canada AM. I worked at all those great little shows. You guys probably don't even know what that is. It used to be the national morning show. It's called Canada AM. My first real job was, so this would have been in 2000. Probably most of your viewers weren't even born. But anyway, so 2000, and Hazel May, who was a reporter on Sportsnet, was one of the only female sportscasters in Canada. And so, rightly so, the network said we need to get more women in sportscasting. I was a trained journalist I loved politics. I loved environment, actually. I was really interested in environment, like there's a lot of beefy stuff that was coming out in that space. So I really was sort of that general crime court and counsel kind of reporter. And they said, well, you're a woman. We're hiring sportscasters. It's the only job I've got right now. Would you think about being a sportscaster? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take the job. So I went up to Sudbury, Ontario, and became a sports anchor. That was my first paying job. So I often tell people my first job was a diversity job, was basically an equity job, I should say, a quality job. There were not a lot of women, and so that's how I got into the business. So when we start to talk about why these kinds of programs, we're hearing all of this noise from America right now. I continue to tell that story because I think it's important. I wouldn't be where I was today if I didn't get that opportunity. In my graduating class at that point, very few people were getting jobs in journalism. And so, it was a great opportunity for me. There was not a single female news director in Canada when I went into news. So I think, things are starting to shift and change. But I tell you that story because, a female sportscaster, if you Googled female sportscaster images, it's not what you would see today. So we have seen some changes there. And I think, obviously women play sports too. We have expertise in it. We can be sportscasters. And then I transitioned into news, which I love, and politics, which I love too, because I think that's where you actually can make change happen.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing your story with us, Melissa. Now let's talk about there's a maxim that says, if you don't tell your story, someone else will tell it for you. The power of storytelling is huge. And very often women sit comfortable. I just do my work however I choose to do my work, and they sit quiet about what they're doing and the impact they're making. Please, could you help us? How can a woman own her own voice and tell her own story in a way that the world can see and accept her for who she is?
Well, I think that we all have a great story. So one of the things that I love to do is work with women to tell their stories. There's a really cool program through New Quarterly. So it's a publication, writer's publication. And we run a program called X Page, where we work with refugees, immigrant women to come. They do I think it's an 8 to 10 week course. They write a story. We publish the story, so they become published authors in Canada, and then they come to me, and we take the story off the page, and we put it into a verbal presentation, and then we put on a show at the end of it. I'm totally going to send you tickets to come to the next event.
That's beautiful.
But
sounds interesting.
What I've learned from working with immigrant women and women that have come to Canada is, I think you're right in the sense that. I'm just going to be quiet and learn what's happening. It's like an observer role, and when you're in an observer role, it's really hard to make change happen. And some of these women were surgeons, dentists, like engineers in the countries that before they came to Canada, and I was like, girl, you ran a department of like 150 people in the Ukraine at this, or in India in this, and you're coming here and you're too shy? Like, what's going on here? So I do think we need to make space for women to do it. We need to teach women how to tell their stories. We need to listen. I think we live in a pretty fast-paced world right now, where, you know, like you're TikToking, you're doom scrolling, everything happens in really quick chunks. Telling your story takes a little bit of time, and I think sometimes, you know, as a society, we need to breathe and listen to the people we're talking to. Eye contact's amazing, right? Like, that's when you truly get to connect with someone. So, you know, maybe my advice as an old lady is like, just slow down, talk to people, be genuine, be authentic, own your own story. Everyone is done. Everyone can learn something from you. I'm probably 2 to 3 times your age. I can learn something from you. And, you know, and all the people here, the woman behind the camera right now, I can learn something from you. So I think we need to start to open up and look at those kinds of things and share your stories. Don't be afraid to share your story. Take space.
Take space.
Yeah, I mean, in so many rooms I go into, I'm the only woman in it. And so it takes you got to have a little bit of courage to do that. But like when I think about like women in tech, so I'm an angel investor, and you know, 2% of venture capital money goes to female entrepreneurs. So when I hear that stat, I could get upset about it, I could get mad about it, or I can start telling the story to as many people that'll listen that we need to make that happen, we need to change that. And then I can join women's groups called Women Funding Women, who only bring female entrepreneurs into the room and only have female angels. So we're funding other women, and those women get an opportunity that they wouldn't be able to in prior cases. So, like, I guess, like, figure out what you're passionate about, own your story, and then tell your story. Don't be afraid to do it. Does that help?
That's so powerful. And you're helping
I need more
all
coffee.
for a few.
Caffeine is good.
Thank you, Melissa. Now let's talk about the biases within the workplace. We still have the pay gaps, the gender biases. How can media and communications help us dismantle those biases?
We got to talk about it. Like, so your job, because people watch you, they listen to you, is to continue to tell those stories. Like, I remember when I was a reporter, I would pitch stories all the time, and I was pitching a story about, it was about a city council and some of the changes that they were making in the budgeting process. And my news director, and I quote, said to me, "Melissa, nobody cares about politics." Aww. And that was my beat. So he's saying to me, nobody cares about what you report on. Nobody cares about the municipality and what's happening in the city. And I walked out of his office so dejected. And then I thought, no, I'm going to show you, because the work that the municipalities do is really, really, really important. So I think we need to continue to do that. We need to when you're interviewing people, look at who you're interviewing, making sure that we're showing the people that can tell the stories and can amplify other people's voices. That's so, so important. Get your stats right. So, you know, so oftentimes I'll hear people on and they're spewing statistics that aren't right. That leaves room for people to be able to come in and challenge you. So when we talk about, news sources, 26% of news sources are female. So 74% of news sources are male. We need to talk about that. In your editorial meetings, I'm all over Conestoga College media. You guys are doing a great job, by the way. Like, when I look around this room, you're doing a great job. So I should be talking about the national newsrooms.
Yes.
The newsrooms outside, they're not reflecting what's actually happening right now in our communities, and we need to see that. So you challenge it, you go for those jobs, you change those newsrooms. That's what you gotta do. Yeah,
wow.
And I'm here to back you. Like, there are enough, I think, people that have come out of the media business, because it isn't easy, that we are willing to back you up. And, you know, organizations like Women Communication Technology, we talk about this all the time. This is what we're passionate about, is pushing those things forward. So use your power. So your social media, push those numbers out. Make sure people are hearing them, seeing them, and understanding them. You know, do your video, like a YouTube video. You know, keep them on the agenda that people are talking about. Like, one of the things I just flew off the handle with about 2 years ago, I think it was about a year and a half ago, is they were doing a panel on women's health in Canada. We need to talk more about women's health in Canada. And they put a panel together of 12 people, and 10 of them were men. So why do we have all men talking about women's health? And so what we did is we went viral with it. We started to throw it out. So there's, I worked on Women's March, which really was started because of Donald Trump when he got reelected. But we brought it to Canada. We brought it global. I actually sat on the Women's March Global Board of Directors, working with women all over the world. And so what we do is when we see things that were happening, we would amplify them. So everybody needs to be talking about this. Raise those issues up so that we can actually, we need to get rid of misinformation. That's a massive thing that's starting to occur, not just starting, that is occurring right now, especially when we talk about social channels. So being a voice, being a voice that puts out good information, backed up by statistics, and then the stories that'll emotionally connect with people. Sorry, I just touched my mic. Stories that'll emotionally connect with people, then they'll remember them. And then don't stop. It's so easy to get tired. I've been tired 100 times. And then, so you've got to surround yourself with amazing people that are going to lift you back up, put some coffee in you, and keep you going, because we can't stop. It's too important.
One coffee in the hand, your support network in the other.
That's right. That's right. You do need it, right? Yes, yes.
Well, those are powerful thoughts, Melissa. And thank you for the way you speak with so much passion. I'm just following you, the way you're moving and the way you're sharing. That's amazing. Now, let's talk about the double standards when it comes to leadership roles in the corporate community or the workplace. So how can we help men, and this is not to target any gender per se, but how can we help organizations to understand that women are also gifted, they're also talented, and they can equally be competent in those roles? Because I think that we still have that perception of, well, she might be busy with the home front, so she might not be available for meetings, you know. I don't know, but could you address that for us, please?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a politician, so I was door knocking. I was a city councillor in Waterloo, and I remember door knocking, and I had 2 young children. I was the youngest woman actually elected to Waterloo City Council. Thankfully, that record got broken in the last election, so I'm happy to. But that was the thing, like there weren't a lot of young women in politics. You know, you tend to wait till your kids leave. Well, actually, that's a great age to be in politics, because guess what? You, like at a city level, so sorry. Look at me tangenting. Okay, coming back. Women in leadership roles at the core. So I think I've often heard, you know, you're home at you've got to get home early because you've got to take the kids. So you know, here's what I like. I actually don't cook at all. My husband does all the cooking. He does the grocery shopping, because my career has me coming home at around 6:30. When I was a politician, sometimes even later. And so our kids wouldn't eat if I had to do the cooking. Or we'd eat scrambled eggs every night, which I love scrambled eggs, by the way. I would totally do that every night if I could. But anyway, so I think, you know, I think promoting different different ways. Like I can be here because I have a husband at home who's taking care and making dinner. I often think people be like, "Oh, you're so lucky." I'm like, "No, this is partnership." So I think, you know, your last guest talked about that too, is calling that stuff out. Yeah, I mean, I remember being in the newsroom and like a phone getting thrown my way and something like that, and you know, there's no tears in the newsroom. Like there's a lot of those kinds of things that were going on back then. And, you know, typically just standing up for myself, because I'm not just standing up for me, I'm standing up for all the other women in the newsroom and then the women that are coming up behind me too. So I think female leadership is so important. Like, did you watch Kamala Harris? Like, she was a woman she was an amazing woman in a leadership role. And despite the fact that she didn't win, I think she inspired so many women over the last, she was pretty fast and tight, but it was, you know, over 6 months for those of her who weren't following prior to that. Those are the women that we need to continue to prop up. You know, I look at some of our Canadian leaders, Chrystia Freeland, Melanie Joly right now, who's right in it, negotiating some of the biggest contracts Canada is dealing with at this time. Yes, like that's exactly it. And so then when people say something like, oh, what's it like being a female in this role? I typically, I like to push back on that, because I think it's like, well, I can tell you what it's like to be, I can tell you what it's like to be in this role. So I try to, one of the things I do you have kids?
I do, 2 boys.
Okay, 2 boys. So do you know when they say something and then you repeat it back to them in the way they're supposed to say it? So I do that in the corporate world. So if someone says something really sexist to me, I'll repeat it back to them in the way that they should have said it to me. And I've noticed that that works. Now, I mean, I admit, I definitely, that comes with some privilege. So, you know, I don't want to overstep, but I definitely think we need to be giving people the right words, just like we do to our children. Let's give it to the, you know, some of the people in corporate spaces. It's men and women too at the same time, but I would say majority would be that you're giving them the right language so that they know. Oftentimes people don't know that they're saying things that are inappropriate or that can be really insulting to us. You know, I remember I was about this much pregnant, like 9 months pregnant, and I was covering the federal election, and I went to interview a candidate. And at that point, because I was so pregnant, I actually had a camera guy that was a photographer that was doing the camera work because they didn't want me dragging a camera around when I was 9 months pregnant. So my camera guy's there, and so we walk into this space, and we're setting up the camera. And so as I walked in, the guy says to me, rubs my belly and says, if we get elected, you get 18 months maternity leave. So I was so taken aback. I remember my photographer, super cool guy, he grabbed my back and then he just started rubbing it like, don't lose your head, don't lose your head. And I was like, okay. And then I said, I'm here as a journalist. I'm not here as a pregnant woman. Remove your hands from me immediately. And he was so taken aback. He's like, and then he tried to like make it nice. And I was like, no, I'm a reporter. You would never ask a man that. You would never touch a man like that. And he was like, okay. It was a terrible interview too because I had him, like he was so upset about it. But do you think you ever did that again? Oh no, he never did that again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and women shouldn't be, because I'm pregnant, don't treat me differently. I'm walking into your space as a respected journalist. You treat me that way, not because of the way I look, but because of the way I'm walking in with a CTV camera on, or sorry, should I say that? Can I say CTV here? Yeah, sorry, as a network, national network. Okay. Yeah, sorry, okay. Edit.
Okay, so let's talk about gender parity. And, you know, there are people who hold the school of thought that it is not realistic to achieve gender parity because it's almost like displacing others for others to come in. What are your thoughts on that?
Whew. Well, talk to me when we get there. We're not there. I think that it is absolutely important for everyone to be able to make the decision of what they want to do. So here's why it matters. When we look at politics, if we don't have women at the table, we're making decisions that could, we're not getting their opinion, so we don't know if we're making good decisions, good legislation. So that matters. So is it 50-50 at that space? I don't know. I've never seen it. I've never seen that at a national level, what that looks like. So I push back on that to say, I don't agree with that. We've never had a world where we've had gender parity, so how can you get data on that? You know, also I find it insulting because, you know, like if it's 50-50 population, why then do you all of a sudden just assume that women would be the ones under it? I don't know, you're getting me heated here. Woo! Okay, so no, here's what I think. Everyone should be able to have the opportunities available to them, and that's not happening right now. So when I can confidently believe that women are making those decisions because those are the decisions they're making, and it's not because of culture, traditions, all of those other things, then I'll say that's good. Then we're in good shape. But we're not there yet. We are not there yet.
Awesome. So, I mean, I've had two powerhouses today. I don't know how to contain myself on this chair. What a conversation we've had today. I mean, there's so much to take away from this conversation, Melissa. Thank you so much for being here today. Now, if there's one thing today's segment has made clear is this: bridging the gender gap in tech, in media, in education, in every facet of life isn't just about conversations. It's about action. As Nkechi stated earlier, so powerfully shared, the future of tech is inclusive, diverse, and filled with unstoppable women who are ready to lead, innovate, and transform industries. And as Melissa also shared, you can be the voice for others, advocate for others. Don't just sit down there and say, I cannot do anything. Tell the stories, share the stories. But you know, because it takes all of us to create that future. And whether you're in tech, you're dreaming to be in the media space, you're breaking glass ceilings, or whatever position you find yourselves, please use your position to open doors for others. This is our call to action. Mentor a young woman, advocate for fair opportunities, challenge biases, support organizations driving change. Because when we empower women, we elevate industries. And when we bridge the gender gap, we don't just change tech, we don't just change media, we change the world. A huge thank you again to my guest, Melissa, and of course, Nkechi, for your wisdom, for your insight, for your passion, and your commitment to making a change everywhere you go. I want to say thank you too for tuning in. And until next time, keep pushing boundaries, keep breaking barriers, and as always, keep taking action. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel and follow buttons on ccdtv.ca on Instagram and Facebook. I'm your host, Mamazo Wonker. Take care.